Hello, listeners. Kathy Lawless, Life Story Curator, bringing you this podcast series, How Did I Get Here? A series of interviews designed for people just starting out, in transition, or possibly feeling stuck, and giving them access to stories of people who have been there, done that, and giving them some insight and maybe inspiration on how to move forward. Today, I'm very excited. We're going to be talking with Skylar del Sol. Hello, Skylar.
Hi.
And Skylar is a professional volleyball player and master coach. And we'll spend a little bit of time in a minute here about what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. But first, listeners, as you know, I always like to start with the icebreaker questions because we want to find out about how you got to be who you are before we get to how did I get here. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up, how many siblings, where you fit in the birth order, and maybe how that influenced you as a young person.
I grew up in Elizabeth, Colorado. Small town.
I know, because I grew up there too. This is kind of crazy.
It's like one stoplight, no stoplight for you, but one stoplight for me.
Yeah, look how big it got. And what was it, a 20-year span probably?
So different now. It's crazy. Grew up in Elizabeth. I am one of 3 children in the family. I was the middle child.
Oh, I'm a middle.
Battling with my older brother. He was a half-brother.
What's
on my
age difference?
Side, 5 years
Wow.
for my brother and 7 years for my sister. Battling with my brother all the time and picking on my sister relentlessly. Just
So you got picked on, or you're battling, so then you're going to pass it on?
Oh my gosh, it was just like a power struggle with my brother. Just he was bigger than me, and I was the kid that just wanted to be bigger than all the bigger kids, So I would just go at him constantly, just trying to beat him in sports, or we'd fight on the trampoline, and he'd just chuck me in one direction because I was just smaller than him. Or, my sister was always like a passive aggressive, just, because she would tell on me automatically. So you had to find ways to scheme around that to where even if she told on you, you couldn't really get in trouble for it.
Yeah. So your brother, you said, was 5 years older?
5 years older.
And she was?
7 years younger.
7 years younger. That's a big span. Wow. So 12 years total for your
right.
For your mom to have a...
So, again, my half-brother was on my mom's side. So then I was the firstborn blood from my mom and dad. And then my sister followed. Oh,
interesting. So in a way, you've kind of got firstborn tendencies in terms of being a driver and all of the stereotypes that are out there, but then yet you had this other brother that, wow.
Yeah, and then I had another half-brother on my dad's side that, for some reason, he wasn't allowed in the family. So I never really got to know him or meet him until later when I was older and kind of detached from the family. I kind of found my own path and then kind of caught up with him, and now we're, I got his number and we can talk. So it's funny how time passes and changes things, right? It just changes so much.
So how do you think it influenced you growing up in a small town?
Everything is, you get to the city, you got to drive 20 to 30 minutes to get there. Groceries, you got to go get groceries for like the week. You can't just
forget
I remember
something that.
You can't just forget something at the grocery store and then say, oh, well, I'll just go back and get it. It's, well, we'll get it next time, hopefully.
Yeah.
So we
do without.
You got to make a list, and you got to stick to the list. And then if you forget something on the list, you don't have any toilet paper for the week. You got to do what you got to do out there. Go find some Indian toilet paper that's on the ground or something. Small town. Let's see. Halloween wasn't really a thing because you got to go walk probably a couple acres to get to the one house, and by that time it's just not worth, trying to stack up some candy. Parties didn't exist. To see your friends, you got to ride a bike a mile down the road and go hang out, and then that's basically a day event. You can't just go say hi and then come back home, or you're just sleeping over all the time. Everything was really, you got to make your own fun. Like my story with my dad is, I guess he caught my brother and I throwing circular saw blades at each other like frisbees.
Oh my God!
And then we'd try to catch it with our feet. So
because that's safer. Yes, because you're wearing. At least you're wearing shoes. I'm hoping.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It was a long time ago. So that was a good story. My dad was a horseshoer. So he had just this pile of horseshoes, and he taught me one day how to make a knife out of a horseshoe on an anvil and a forge.
Wow.
So you stick the horseshoe in the forge, get that thing heated up, and you grab it with some tongs, then you stick it on the anvil, and you just pound it down to a thin blade.
Thin, sharp blade.
And then you go get to the grinder, and then you grind the metal down to make it sharper. And then for some reason, I just thought I was a ninja. You know, I'd chuck the blade up in the air, and I'd try to catch it with my hand, and then you're shooting BB guns at friends, and you try and run away. I don't know how I survived, to be honest.
Wow.
Looking back at it.
These are some interesting stories. Well, it's fine. So tell me and I usually have to get someone's age in these interviews because it sets the context. What decade were you growing up in Elizabeth?
90s.
90s. This is the 90s, yeah. And I was in the 70s, and I would say I had the same story. Well, I actually sharpened saws for my dad. He had a saw sharpening business. Did I say that? A saw sharpening business. But I remember as my sisters, we had to make our own fun. And, we had this weird sand pit, the gravel pit we called it. And we had, trucks and weird, little toy trucks and stuff. But yeah, it was very interesting that you had to make your own fun. But I would think 20 years later, you would be in a different era then, but yet you were still making your own fun doing
probably just the location, right?
Crazy stuff. Yeah, you're in
like a woody, kind of
rural area.
Yeah, not a lot out there.
Yeah, you couldn't just walk to there was no convenience stores. Nothing was walkable, right? I mean, you had to ride a bike or something.
No movie theaters, no parks.
Now, did you have animals? I mean, if your dad was a horseshoer, did you have horses?
Oh my gosh, yeah. We had a pony. His name was Johnny. He was not a nice pony. We had a couple horses. I think they were more boarding horses, so they wouldn't be our horses. I think we would just hold them for people. We had cows that, I don't know why we had cows. It's just, we had so many.
How many acres did you have?
2.5 acres. So we had, so it was 2 different lots, right? So the house was on one lot, and then the pasture was on another lot. That didn't have really anything. So we kept the horses in like a 1 acre lot, and then the houses were on another acre. So we had pigs at one point, and we had a lot of chickens, but we never got any eggs from the chickens, and we never really ate the chickens. I don't know why we had chickens. And then usually coyotes would get the chickens. So then the coyotes would get the chickens, so we got goats.
The coyotes didn't get the goats?
And the goats were like bunnies. They multiplied like crazy. And then we had pigs. And then eventually my dad got llamas somehow. And then we had horses. We had a donkey and cows.
Wow. So I'm guessing as a young person, you had to take care of all these. You had to feed them and...
That was probably my number one responsibility in the house. Was when I'd get up before school, I had to make sure I fed the cows and the horses with some hay and some chicken feed, and I don't know how we fed the goats. I don't remember. Probably the same chicken feed. Oh yeah, we just poured it in. It was like oats or something.
Yeah.
And then the pigs, and then I'd go wait for the bus. Yeah. And then the bus stop was just like the entire community at one. Like
all ages, right? It was
anybody that lived within probably like 5 miles had to come to
one bus spot.
Our driveway. Yeah.
Well, at least it was close for you, right?
Well, you got to think like the buses here have to drive through like one suburb.
Yeah.
Right? There, they have to drive across the country and then back to the school.
Yeah.
So it's...
The mileage.
Yeah.
They can't make it into every little subdivision or what have you. It's just too much territory. So what sports did you and your brother and sister play then?
My sister was a gymnast is what it's called. And then my brother, kind of nerdy, he played some volleyball, but never really remembered him playing much. He was more of a video game, like on the computer, super smart guy. And then I played anything with a ball.
Anything with a ball. Volleyball, basketball?
Yeah. Basketball, baseball, football. Wasn't allowed to play real football. Had to play flag football. Mom was scared I was going to get injured.
That probably serves your brain well today, by the way, that she...
Probably does.
Because after I hear some of the stories with the saw blades and how you were treating your brother, you were pretty reckless, maybe?
Very reckless, very aggressive.
Very aggressive.
Very aggressive. I was just a terror. I wanted to be like the boss all the time. And it was always a power struggle.
So it was about being in charge?
Yeah. Just wanted to be the guy. Wanted to be right about everything, would fight to death to make sure I was right about it. Even if I was completely wrong, I would just argue and fight all the time.
Okay, well, let's shift a few gears here, and then we're going to start getting into this story. So on a fun meter, scale of 1 to 5, 1 being couch potato, 5 being life of the party, where would you put yourself?
Oh, boy. That depends on the setting, I think. So there's always a time and place to be a 5, and then there's always a time to be a 1. So if it's life of the party, I'm up there. I turn up really.
When it's the right time, you can turn it on.
I turn it on.
Okay, cool.
And then, when it's a calmer setting and it's like, we're going to watch a movie on the couch or, something like that, or it's just been a long day and, the wife needs to unwind or something like that, it's very calm, very mellow.
You can really kind of go with the flow at certain times. Okay. What about on a risk-taking meter? Same scale, 1 to 5, 1 being, lower risk, 5 being a high-risk taker.
I am a high-risk taker, for sure.
And how does that show up for you?
Specific?
Like with, is this decisions that you make, or with money, or with physical fitness, or all of those things?
Yeah, every aspect, when it's, I need to make a volleyball tournament and it comes to money for flights and hotels or something like that, then it's, I got to go.
You got to go.
You find a way. I would call friends to help me out with flights, or, I'd call anybody in the area to give me a piece of couch or a piece of floor to sleep on or anything like that. When it comes to like finances, everything is based on education, right? I'll make sure I have everything in place before I jump into a risky situation. So, I guess that risk kind of goes down when you think about it that way, but
well, it's funny. A lot of people talk about that. They say, well, but it's calculated risks because I do X, 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 and X to make sure that I'm going to be successful. Right. So I don't just kind of blindly go through life. I take big risks and more risky maybe than other people might seem, but
I guess
it's calculated and it's like you said, it's educated. I like that.
Everything is educated. So, if I didn't have a place to stay, I wouldn't go travel. It just wouldn't be possible.
Okay. Right? So you wouldn't go ahead and go.
Yeah.
Even if you.
That'd be a calculated risk.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't really possible to go anywhere, I wouldn't go. But, like stock market stuff, you want to kind of educate yourself on a stock market before you start throwing your money at stuff.
Yeah.
And losing money, you always want to have a chance to make it back. So, being educated like with financial literature and all that stuff is, definitely a high thing. So educated risk.
Educated risk.
More so. But I do take a lot of risks.
So not afraid to take risks. Yeah. Some people, it stops them.
I'm definitely not afraid to lose money as long as it's in the right way.
Yeah. Something that you care about or passionate about, it might cost you.
Right.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about what you do today. So you're a professional volleyball player and also a master coach in the volleyball ranks. So talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into how did I get here?
Sure. So the master coach is, like I said, a fancy way of saying like a floater coach. I help the coaches or coach the coaches or help coaches coach the kids. And, I'll step in and initiate a drill for a coach so they're not chucking balls over the net and then trying to yell at kids and slowing down the drill. I'll keep chucking balls over the net so they can go over there and coach them. I do private lessons, and that's kind of like the more of the income that I make.
So private lessons to individual players, but do you also do private lessons to coaches to kind of coach them on being a coach? Or?
If they want help, yes. I don't ever try and push the way that I insist coaches coaching volleyball on coaches that aren't willing to receive help. So I'm never going to step on a court for a coach that, I'll give some helping feedback because they have 12 girls standing in line to get 1 rep every minute, versus like, hey, if we move the drill around this way, this might help get the girls more reps or more game-like, or make it more available for all the girls to play. And then the coach will be like, oh, I'm going to do it this way because of this. I'm not going to step on any toes and be like, well, you're an idiot. Like,
yeah.
You got 12 girls standing on the line and you're not paying attention, and you're just trying to get through one drill. There's multiple ways to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm never gonna push more than I'll insist that they do one thing, and then if I get any backlash, I'll just leave you alone.
Yeah, you kind of offer suggestions, and usually they're like, oh, yeah, it's a good...
If they're willing to bounce ideas off of me and, kind of work with me, and I'll say, hey, I can do this while you're doing that, and, I'll be more inclined to help them. So there's a handful of coaches that have always given me some grief and argued with me on, how to coach or, get the girls to be more involved, and I stay away from them.
You don't want to be in that.
I don't even want to deal with it.
Well, it sounds like you don't have to be in charge anymore.
Right. Right. But I definitely am passionate about this sport, and I want to help anybody that wants to be helped at any time, free of charge, or, they can't afford it. I'm always willing to help, those people that, I was one of those kids. I always wanted to learn more about this sport, and finances was a big problem.
Yeah.
Couldn't play club volleyball because we couldn't afford it, and then one of my friend's dads ended up having to subsidize that for me, so I had the ability to play on the team.
Wow.
So I always got help. So, giving back to the volleyball community, and, I help adults, and I help the local Colorado crew here for players. I get all those guys coming in, and I'm never afraid to step in and say, hey, we need to do this better, or you need to do this better, or you're screwing up here, to kind of propel them up the volleyball ranks here for their own personal gain.
Yeah.
So always willing to help, always willing to push people to be better at this sport.
You sound like a real ambassador for the sport.
I try.
That's cool. Well, and it is expensive. I've got friends who've got kids in it, and I start hearing the money that's involved, and it is about privilege all of a sudden, financial privilege.
Yeah.
And yet you think about, oh, well, it's sport in high school, and you should be able to get a chance to play, but it's not that easy to get a chance to play. So
there's always funding. There's always a helping hand somewhere, as long as you're willing to work for it. Even at the professional levels, you can't afford to go someplace at some point, and then you need to call a friend to say, hey man, I need a flight, desperately need it, can you fund me this trip this time, and then it's, you got to network, and you got to be a good person for people to like you, and if you're good to people, then people will be good to you.
Yeah, and want to help you, right? Yeah. Cool. Well, so talk a little bit about being a professional volleyball player. But that's I know, because we were just talking about all this. So you're coming up on the AVP season is about to start, right? So you're going to play on the AVP.
Yeah.
And for our listeners, that's the Association of Volleyball Professionals.
Yeah.
And that's been an interesting league, right? Because some years it has funding, and some years it's got financial difficulty. And
right. Well, always, it's all about sponsorships. So
as players, but also as the league, right?
Right. Yeah. So, players have to fund themselves. The league gives money, but, you gotta it's almost like if you're traveling to the tournament and then you're winning money at the tournament, you just paid for your tournament, basically. So you're almost playing for free, and you're considered a professional. So, you're making money to spend money, or you're spending money to try and make money.
To break even. It sounds like you end up breaking even at the end.
Usually, unless you're one of the top guys and you got to finish in the top tier, maybe top 8 teams every single tournament, then you're making some decent money.
Yeah.
But then you got to take half of that paycheck to pay off the expenses. And then it really, sponsorships really come into play. AVP is funded by a very generous man who is keeping volleyball alive right now. AVP,
Yay.
Yeah. yay. But I think he's pulling most of that money out of his pocket right now. And he's trying to build the AVP back up to where it was, where it was, they were paying like Karch Cry or, whoever was winning at the time, like $100,000.
Yeah, there was a time, yeah.
There was a time where volleyball was a big thing, and $100,000 then was like $500,000 now.
Yeah.
And inflation and all that stuff. But, winning an AVP tournament now, you're getting maybe $5,000. And that's like one of the best teams in the world is only getting $5,000.
Wow.
And that's just for an individual. So as a team, you're probably making $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's split, and then you got to pay taxes on it, hopefully. Or you got yourself set up as an LLC, and you're using that for, balls and equipment and travel funds and all that stuff. So you really got to be careful when you're winning money at the AVP. You're signing a 1099 contract, and some of the guys I doubt are pulling money out to pay taxes on it.
Yeah.
And
because then you're responsible for paying taxes. It's not like they
right.
withhold it from the winnings.
So you get a $5,000 check, and then you got to pay 33% depending on your area. California's even higher tax bracket, so you're paying over 40% on that. So now you're making $2,500, maybe a little bit more, $3,000 for the tournament. Now you got expenses of $1,000 because you got to buy the flights and the hotels and the rental cars, the Ubers, and then you got to buy food while you're going there. So then you're making maybe $2,000, and now you got to pay your mortgage or you got to pay rent for the month. It's a disaster.
Yeah.
And then you got health insurance, and then you got everything else that kind of comes into play, like a phone bill. And at the end of the day, you're maybe capitalizing on $500.
Wow.
And that's if you're winning.
That's if you're winning. If you didn't win.
If you're not winning the tournament, now you're in the red.
Yeah.
You're not making any money. So this sport is, you got to love it.
I
really
guess.
Gotta love it.
Well, so let's speak about that love. Did you know you always wanted to be a volleyball player? So let's go back to how did I get here? So when you were a young man, and I don't even know how young that would be, did you always know you wanted to be a professional volleyball player?
Always.
So, wow.
Rob Grant.
So you, by the way, are 6 now people that I've interviewed out of 42 that knew what they wanted to be when they grew up and then went and did it. So congratulations.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
Most people are in this mindset of, I was kind of good at math or science, or I was good with writing, and then I found that next step, and it's more about figuring it out. But you always had this inner knowing and a dream, right? So cool.
Always. It was my goal to go to the Olympics,
And in beach or in six-man, or did it matter?
Indoor was the first dream, and then I adapted into beach volleyball. Mm-hmm. Indoor developed itself to be, you have to be really tall.
Yeah.
Or, like Taylor Sanders, 6'4", and jumps like 45 plus inches. That guy's just a physical.
So how tall are you?
6 feet tall.
6 feet tall.
And I jump 39.5 inches, which is the last time I tested.
Wow. Which is super impressive, by the way.
It's better than average.
Yeah,
but
a lot better than average. But it's not Taylor. That's what you keep comparing yourself to, right?
That guy he's just a phenomenal athlete. I wanted to go to the Olympics, and since I was a kid, I was going to be a professional athlete. I wanted to be a professional athlete, and back then I didn't know you can't really make a lot of money at volleyball. so love-hate relationship there.
Well, it is kind of, you look at, until I've been talking more with you about your journey, it's something that I think is very glamorous, right? You're like, oh, this is a really cool thing he's doing, and he's traveling all over the world. And then when you start breaking it down for me, I'm like, wow, that takes a lot of persistence and drive. So I admire that.
Endless.
And you don't ever see that. That's the behind the scenes. And that's part of why I do this podcast, is that whether you're in a career that's in business or in your case a professional athlete, or I've done a comedian, musician, artist, what is the path and what keeps people moving forward through it? And what I'm finding is in business there's probably more structure and a career path than in a lot of these other careers. Like the comedian was telling me, he's like, there's no career path. It's, am I a writer? Am I on stage? How do I know I've made it? I mean, it's, yeah, same thing with it. I mean, you kind of know if you make it, if you win, but then if you look at your bank account, are you winning? I don't know. That's
You're
a lot of.
You are not winning.
You are not winning.
You don't play volleyball to make money. There's no way. You play volleyball because you love it.
Yeah. So you make money so you can play volleyball. You make money in other ways.
Everybody says it's a very expensive hobby. It's a very expensive hobby. You make it when you're actually in the green at the end of the season.
So that's when you know, kind of, at the end of a season, that's kind of a metric that you use on your success?
You have funded your volleyball endeavors to the point where it's not killing your life. That's it's crazy. We have a friend here that moved to California to become the best volleyball player he can be, and he moved out there because California is kind of like the volleyball hub of the world.
Yeah.
And he lives 15 minutes from the beach in an apartment and with his girlfriend right now, and he has to work, a certain amount of hours to pay for rent and his food and everything and cars and whatever that is, and he keeps his expenses as low as possible so he doesn't have to work like a 40-hour-a-week job.
So he has time to train.
The ability to train, but now he's working so much to try and pay for his bills that he's not getting the amount of sand time that he wants to make it in volleyball. So it's just crazy to think, like, in California, expenses are so high, taxes is so high, everything that life has to offer is so high that when you go out there, if you don't make a lot of money and you try and play volleyball, now you got to fund your volleyball season, and now you got to try and pay money for apartments and stuff like that.
At all higher expenses, yeah.
His expenses are, even though he's living in an apartment, his expenses are much higher than mine.
And you have a house, right? And
I have a house. It's just it kills people.
Yeah.
This sport just beats people down all the time. People see people making money at this tournament and you're the first place winner and you just made money, but you don't see the amount of hours that you had to work just to get to that tournament.
Yeah. And
then you don't see the amount of hours that you had to put in to perform like you do at the tournament. So volleyball's a full-time job. And any job you have on top of it is also a full-time job. And if you're trying to fund volleyball as your job, you're actually working like 90 hours a week trying to pay for volleyball.
Wow. But doing something you love.
But you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right?
So back to a young person. So I think when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that at the age of 4, volleyball was something that you just had this bug for. So how who introduced you to it?
My mom was a director of a rec program in Parker, and the introduction was, well, I can't leave you at home, so you're going to come with me to the gym. And I would run around and throw balls at girls, and, I'd just try and jump on any court and try and do anything with volleyball because I had nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And that was...
Well, this is probably a good strategy of hers that you needed to burn off energy, I'm guessing it sounds like.
A lot of it. Ongoing.
But, so when did you start recognizing that you had, some pretty serious skills? I mean, at 4, I'm guessing you didn't have a lot of skills at that point. But
when did I recognize?
What age was it?
I started 10? Moving up. Yeah, I'm trying to think because the rec program, it was a co-ed league, and it was all done by school grade. So whatever grade you were in that specific division.
Ah, okay.
And then I started flying through the divisions or age groups 6 6th grade, 5th grade. How old's a 5th grader? Like 10?
Yeah.
So you're right. So about 10, I was moving up from like 5th grader playing on like the 8th grade team.
Wow.
And then, once I got into middle school, they wouldn't let me play on the 8th grade team anymore. I had to go up to the high school.
But yet you're still so young.
Right.
Now, how tall were you? I mean, did you grow early? Were you?
Oh, I don't know. I would say I wasn't very tall, just probably more physical than, the girls that were playing in the rec league. And actually the Ammermans, Dalton and Luke Ammerman were on my team. And we kind of grew up playing volleyball together.
Yeah.
Since we were.
Well, that's a great
little.
Family to grow up playing next to.
Yeah,
now they're super tall.
And then they got taller, and then it was like, well.
Yeah, at one point you guys are probably all the same height, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, what happened? They come back on the summer, and I remember that in high school. That it was specifically between freshman and sophomore year, the noticeable growth spurt of all the boys, and then sophomore to junior was like, holy cow! And then
Yeah, I stopped growing. They kept growing. We kind of parted ways halfway through high school, and then we would just battle against each other.
So then competitors, not teammates.
It was like king of the state. Dalton and I were at each other the whole time, to prove to one another who was going to be the king of this volleyball thing in Colorado.
So back to your growing up, I want to be the boss.
Yeah.
I want to be the best.
It's a constant thing, that's what drives volleyball
Mm-hmm.
for me to play, I want to prove that you don't have to live in California to be the best. I will work hard at everything I do, and I will put in countless hours, no matter where I am, to try and keep up with those California guys that have the ability to go to the beach every single day and play against the best. And, I'm doing it. I'm battling against some of the best teams in the world that play to the international level. And I go out to California, and now I'm starting to get recognized and get those phone calls back to where I actually have the chance to practice and play against those guys when I go out to California. So, working hard, and it does pay off. I might not be the most physical athlete out there, but I'll work hard to be one of the most physical players out there. Here it's a different story.
Yeah.
I can physically play against everybody here. But when you start playing against like the Dahlhausers of the world, which is like the best of the best in the world, that's just a whole nother level.
Yeah.
I'm good here. You go out there, I'm like a mid-level, kind of tapping into the higher level area physically and mentally, and this game is just all mental.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the mental then. What does that little voice in your head? Is it a critic, a cheerleader?
Oh man, it just
confidence
it just beats me down.
It beats you down.
All
okay.
The time. It's are you doing this? It's a critic. It really is. I'm critiquing myself in every aspect of life. And everybody has to wear so many hats. I got to be a professional beach volleyball player, and you got to put on the hat, and then you got to put your poker face on. Nothing disrupts you when you're on the court. It just disappears. You watch The Greatest Game with Shia LaBeouf, and you clear the mechanism with what's that pitcher that I don't know. He clears the mechanism when he's pitching, and he's just got to completely go into his own little zone to play the sport to the best of his ability. I don't hear my wife is screaming on the sideline, and she's like, "Did you hear me?" I'm like, "I had no idea that you were being screaming."
Really? So
I don't hear anything.
Really?
Everything is focused on the court. Anybody that's drinking a beer on the sidelines and heckling and talking trash to you and just trying to destroy your game, it zones out. Everything is one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
Then you gotta take care of your home life. Right? You got to take care of your job. So you got to put your coaching hat on, and then when that's done, you got to take your coaching hat off, and then you got to put your husband hat on, and you got to be a husband. So trying to funnel everything into, you got to be the best at everything. Wearing multiple hats every single day. Mm-hmm. You go into the gym, you're in your ears. you got to lift. You got to make sure you're focused on rehabbing and making sure you're not tearing down your body to the point where you can't play volleyball anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and as a professional volleyball player, you don't have access to what like an NBA player does. You don't have the massage therapists and the rehab players and the coach that's giving you a workout and the people that are giving you nutrition plans. You got to figure out what your body needs to eat. You got to educate yourself in food, hydration, like electrolytes, vitamins that you have to take, and then you gotta educate yourself on lifting, because I can't pay for a professional lifter that's going to teach me how to lift correctly and give me a plan to do and build my body up for me. I have to go do that myself. So everything that goes into my life is self-built, and then you can't just leave it there. You got to build a foundation of knowledge to keep building up your tower of greatness, you know?
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that aspect of it. I like your concept of how you're wearing all these different hats, and you've also got to be great at all of those hats. And, it's funny when I think of the business side of it, many times people can become a workaholic, and they're working 80 hours a week. But it's in an office, it's at their job, it's traveling. And then they neglect the physical element of their life, right? They aren't getting any physical activity. Right. Your whole world is physical activity, so you've kind of got to dial down from some of that to recover. It's a different aspect of it. So. Well,
you got to turn it off, right? Like you said, a workaholic. Yeah, you can be a workaholic, but your home life's going to suffer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You're not going to have a best friend at home anymore. You're just going to have a roommate. You're not. It's sad. And then you're a workaholic, so you're sitting down in the chair, like you said, and you're not getting physical. So, I got to work. I still have to make money to pay for my lifestyle and my home and everything. But my work is physical activity, like you said. And then I got to coach, and then I got to play, and then I got to be with my best friend at home.
Yeah.
And then I got to take care of my dog, and then I got to still make sure I'm remodeling the house, So, and then I got to make sure I'm on top of the gym, right? So you got to go from coaching to playing to the gym to home life, and then whatever else needs attention.
Yeah.
And there's no turning it off. I'm tired at the end of the day for sure, because you got to switch all those things, and if you don't give 100% effort in all aspects of life, you're going to fail at something, and it's not going to benefit your life.
Yeah. So who were some of the mentors that you have had in your life that either got you to where you're at, or role models? Like this mental aspect of it is a big part of the sport. So maybe there's two questions there. So first, let's talk with who are some of your mentors.
Wow. Okay, so
maybe those are role models.
To start, that would be like my family. Like my mom, at the very early ages of my life, she would drag me to the gym, and I'd play volleyball. That pushed me to become the path that I'm on right now. Volleyball was my life then, because that was my mom's life, and then that kind of absorbed into my life. My dad, as I got older, really became my hero. That guy was a workaholic. As soon as the light was up, he was up, and he was gone. He was out of the house, and he was going to shoe horses. As soon as the sun set, then he was home. But he was on the phone, scheduling more clients, like 3 months down the line, So he was gone at like 6 a.m., and then he wasn't done working until like 10 p.m.
Oh, wow.
So, again, in the earlier stages of life, my mom was the only person that was around. And then my dad was working. And he had to support 3 kids, a wife, and all the animals that we had with his job. So, nothing against him. He was a great provider. He provided for the family. And my mom didn't get paid for the rec program that she was working for. She basically did that for free, or got paid like $500 a month or something like that. And then my dad had to pay for 3 different vehicles You know, he had a summer truck that saved on gas mileage, and he had a winter truck that like got 12 miles to the gallon, but he needed to drive a 4-wheel drive through the winter.
Yeah, because he's driving in pastures and
Middle of like fields and
mud up to.
You know, and then we had to shovel out an acre of snow to get him out the driveway so he could go work. So my brother and I were up at like 5 a.m. sometimes trying to shovel out like a 7-foot drift in 1997 when we had a giant snowstorm, and it was like I wasn't even taller than that. So you had to take like 6 shovels to clear out one shoveled spot. You know, and we had to do that for a full acre.
Oh, jeez.
You know, living in Elizabeth.
I know. I remember back in the day. We had a tractor. Dad had a tractor that.
Oh, lucky.
Which I got fairly proficient on.
My dad had slave labor, so.
Yeah. Well, we had our own. There was that.
That
hauling cinder blocks and
Oh goodness.
lumber and such.
So my dad was a big role model when I kind of got in my later teens. He was always a nice guy. He would do anything for anybody. If you couldn't pay for a horse to be shoed, he'd say, you know, give me back when you can. If you remember, you know, he was always helping out a neighbor, you know, with something. You know, they would call and say, hey, can you come help me with my roof? And he'd go help them with their roof for free. You know,
even though he didn't have much time, it sounds like.
Not much time at all. So he'd always find time, if he could, to go help somebody. And I really admired that. So, you know, I go through my day and I work hard. My dad worked hard, you know. He inspired me to be a good person, to treat people like I want to be treated, you know. Always nice, always willing to help. I want to make their day better with what I can offer them, you know, and nothing in return.
Mm-hmm.
So
good neighbor.
Just be a good neighbor.
But also sounds like a very strong work ethic.
Yeah. That's the many hats, right? You can't fail at any point in the day. You got to keep grinding.
Yeah.
You got to give as much effort as you can, and you got to give it to the full ability. So my dad definitely works hard, good person. Definitely developed my, you know, person today. Rob Graham, the high school coach that kind of pushed me into the higher levels, more advanced stages in volleyball. And then I went through club volleyball, then went to college in San Diego and fell in love with the beach there. And that's kind of where the indoor...
When you shifted from indoor, okay.
Yeah. So I think those 3 people really drove me to, you know, keep grinding at volleyball. And I told Rob Graham that I was going to make the Olympics, and he looked at me, he's like, sure thing, kid. You know, he didn't believe me then. And nowadays, I see him when I'm coaching. He's kind of the director at Elevation. You know, he was the guy that kind of built me up through volleyball and got me to the point where I was playing at a high level, just based on education again. You know, I now had the knowledge to play this sport better. Mm-hmm. This isn't a sport where you can just go out and like knock somebody over. You know, I know there's knowledge behind that and tons of work behind that, but there's so many different aspects of like, you got to be good at everything. You can't just be a lineman. You have to now be a lineman and a quarterback and a receiver and a running back. So there's just so many different aspects to this game that you got to be good at.
Yeah, really, really good at.
You can't just be a 6-foot guy standing in the paint trying to dunk a ball. You got to be a 7-foot guy that can shoot from the 3-point line too, and have good ball handling skills and all that. So those are definitely my three mentors. You know, ideally those they brought
really
me up.
Influenced you, and as a player.
Yeah.
And a person.
Very
cool. Well, Skylar, I could talk to you all morning, but we do have to start wrapping up. I can't believe it's already... It's been almost 45 minutes. No, not at all. It's been great insight. So when you look back at your life so far in your career, what would you say has served you the best? Is there a particular trait, a skill, or maybe a mindset perspective that you think really has benefited you?
yeah, I would kind of go back to that, you know, the little voice inside my head,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the critic, the many hats that you have to wear. You know, I just never give up. I just want to learn and be educated, and I want to succeed in life. You know, so the critic is probably my biggest driver of what I do today.
So the critic really helps move you forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always.
I felt like the critic for me sometimes held me back.
Yeah.
You know, it created doubt and fear. I think what was niggling, you know, that little voice for me at times about, you know, I remember sitting in a meeting and thinking, well, so-and-so always has a good idea. And, oh, look, then, yeah, think of this. You know, someone says something in there, and I'm like, that's brilliant. What's my idea? I don't even have an idea. I mean, this is the conversation going on in my head, which is not serving me, not helping me be present in the moment. But
Right.
Sounds like your critic is more driving you about working out harder, who to be, when to be, you know, at different times. But I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth. And
I would say people have different vantage points at certain situations. I was listening to a public speaker, and he's talking about a free bagel, you know, and he's talking about, hey, let's go get a free bagel. And his friend says, dude, look at the line. And he's saying, free bagel, you know. And this is a big one, because this applies to my life almost every day. It's not about how long it's going to take you to get to the bagel. It's the fact that you're going to get a free bagel. So what you see as a fear, I also have that fear. You know, when you ask a professional athlete in any way, how are you nervous to go play the best team in the world? Well, if you're nervous and you go into a mindset that you fear that loss or losing to the best team or playing the best player in the world, you know, and you walk on the court, you're going to lose, you know? Mm-hmm. Or you can say, yeah, I am afraid of that team or, you know, the opponent, but I'm going to beat the crap out of them. You know, I'm not, it's like you can run from a bear or you can fight the bear type mindset, right? Mm-hmm. So I get nervous all the time. I get nervous playing teams here. You know, you'll never see it.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, I can't believe that, because it doesn't look like you're ever nervous.
I get nervous playing, like, small teams all the time. You know, I'm not doing things correctly on the court. That's the critic, right? Mm-hmm. You're failing. Do better. It's never about what's in front of you. It's what's the end result. What's going to be the best end result that you can possibly make. I am afraid, but my fear turns into, I'm going to fight that, you know, and while I'm fighting it, I'm still afraid, but I'm just going to do the best I can. If you do the best you can and you work hard, then, you know, you're going to get the best result you possibly can do. If you don't work hard, then you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to fail before you even tried.
Yeah. And then that's probably your mindset.
All the time.
All the time.
Work hard. Be a good person. Get the best result you possibly can.
Well, great words of wisdom. That'll be one that I end up quoting you on probably when I write up your abstract. I get the free bagel. Well, Skylar, thank you so much for sharing your story and how you got to where you're at today, and this inside view of what being a professional athlete is. It's a, you know, I think a very eye-opening view for someone who has played the sport like I have for so many years, but I've never played at that level or never even thought about playing at that level.
Lots of love.
Yeah,
lots of love.
Gotta love the sport, and I do love the sport, and it's been great for me too, but in a different way. So thank you again, and listeners, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the series, and also please write any comments and questions you might have for future interviews. Again, you can find me on lifestorycurator.com, or I'm also on Apple, Google, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So on that note, I think we'll wrap up here, and you have a great day.